Well, we have Sean Long, the incredible guitarist from While She Sleeps, a metalcore band, and you guys are dropping your fifth album called Sleep Society, and that drops April 16th. And you've been dropping singles and music along the way. I listened to Sleep Society, and it looks like your UK tour is already sold out, which is super exciting.
Oh yeah, it's sold out. I think it sold out in the first couple of weeks, which is pretty cool. But the bad thing is, I think we're gonna have to reschedule it, which was always kind of in the back of our mind, during the pandemic. But we did our best, and I think we're gonna have to move it. But it's sold out, so that's good.
Yeah, that actually is a good sign, right? When things get better and we're able to have live shows again. Um, so big congrats on that.
Thank you.
And now that we're on the topic of live shows, that is such a wonderful feeling for the fans, but I also know it's a wonderful feeling for the band. During this pandemic, how have you dealt with not having that part of, your life?
Yeah, I think most artists are now really feeling the sting of this now. I know I've been feeling it rather subconsciously, and now I've kind of added it all together, and maybe this is why I've been feeling certain things. Like, a lot of what we do as a band is we spend an hour on stage kind of exerting all this energy that we've been building up, whether it's personal or whether it's the energy we want to get out in the songs or whatever. For that reason, we have this kind of set time every day, 1 hour. It's almost like a workout every single day. And that's been taken away from us. And I feel that's really starting to hit home with me now, because even I don't really work out every day. I don't do exercise every day, and I try and meditate as much as possible. But for that 1 hour every day, it was almost like a unwritten schedule that all artists have. You have this moment where I suppose your personality goes out the window, and you get to really just express yourself freely, and um, there's not much suffering and not many problems can get in those moments. And I think, especially for a metal band like us, we go fucking mental on stage. I mean, so there's a lot of energy released there, and um, I think I'm missing that now, and I think that's what a lot of artists are going to start to notice, is that a lot of angst building up to kind of some kind of energy release that we're missing out of.
Well, I think especially for metal bands and the kind of live show that you put on, I mean, everybody's jumping, everybody's like expressing, and they're just having a great time. And I've realized that that kind of expression of emotion, we don't normally get to do that in our everyday lives, especially, I mean, we just don't get to do that. But with music, whether it's playing or whether it's expressing yourself during the live show, just letting all of that out, it just makes you feel so good.
Well, think about that from a fan's perspective as well. Like you said, like, how many people would feel comfortable just screaming or singing a song really loud? Like, you don't ever do that. And I think that's an important part of being a human. I think there's so many spiritual practices that involve kind of screaming and like letting out. I think there's a reason behind that. And I think for the average person, I suppose, that's not in a band, they, like you said, they don't get to do that ever. When do they get to jump around and just scream without being looked at as like a mental person in the street or something? Do you know what I mean? It's like, I think everyone needs that. Like, everyone needs that release.
Absolutely. And speaking of your new album, you have a song called Nervous on it, which you
Mhm.
wrote, and you said that it's the single most important song I've ever written in my life. And it's about acute anxiety. And I'm wondering,
Yeah.
how, if- can you describe how acute anxiety shows up in your life?
Um, I can. I'm just gonna delete this. Internet might help it out a bit. There we go. Um, where it manifests for me, in terms of my expression, especially music and the way I speak about these things, it comes from kind of a moment in my life a few years ago, actually. So acute anxiety and really deep anxiety doesn't affect me as much anymore. I think that I found a way out of that, and the reason why I'm so empowered to talk about it is because of that fact. So I experience all kinds of anxieties all the time. Like, I call them, like surface manifestations of anxiety. Like I get nervous for interviews. This is a common thing I say a lot, and just stuff like social anxieties. These are things that I can deal with, and it's not really a problem for me. But it's the because I think everyone deals with these things on different levels, but it's just sometimes they may go a little bit deeper for a specific individual. And for me, it went that way. It went quite deep. So and I found a way out. So that's how I speak about it in terms of acute, because there was a moment where it went really bad for me. And now, having come through the other end, that's where my inspiration comes to talk about it, because I know whilst you're in that place, it's very easy to believe that you can never get out of it. That's what I believe. Hand on heart, I didn't believe anything other than that. I didn't think I'd ever make it out, and I did. So that's where the inspiration comes from. But I deal with anxiety daily, but it's not problematic anymore. It's more just it is what it is kind of thing. But
Hmm.
I'm out of that hole, which is where I'd like to give my inspiration to people stuck in a similar position.
Well, I think you used some words that really describe what it feels like when you fall into an acute anxiety or a severe depression. It's like you
Yeah.
fall into a hole, like you're at the bottom of a dark well and you're trying to get help and but you're not able to see the light, or it's very hard to see the light, and
Yeah.
you're trying to find a way out of that. Um, I know you've also, talked about depression in the past, uh, and they often go hand in hand, depression and anxiety. But let's say you mentioned that a few years ago that it got really bad for you. Was there something that triggered that, or something that was going on in your life that kind of made you spiral to a deeper, darker place?
Yeah, and I actually think this is very common for a lot of people in this situation too. It's usually some traumatic event that kind of sets this ongoing struggle off. It's usually some kind of pinnacle event, not for everyone, but I know it was for me, and I've heard similar stories. So yeah, this was. I'll try not to go too deep into it. It's quite a big story, but the short version of it is I don't put this all down to drinking and partying and stuff like that, but as I was growing up and we were getting more successful in the band, it was very common and very normal for if you live in England, basically you party. It's quite normal for people to drink and party in England, and if you're in a band, you party a little bit more. So that was normal for us when we were growing up. Um, and in retrospect, it does. I do feel like it might have got a little bit out of hand, but I never think it was like, I was never like an alcoholic or a drug addict or anything like that. It's not. That's not my story, but I do think it played a part. So I think it was 2015 Warped Tour. Um, Obviously, basically partying every night, non-stop. I used to smoke as well. My diet was terrible. Um, but before this, I had like a problem with shortness of breath. Every now and then, I had asthma, but really mild asthma, and I had this problem with shortness of breath that I completely ignored my entire life. Um, and I drink past it, and I just do my life. I never saw it as a problem. And then basically, I played this show. It was in Vegas. It was the hottest show to date in history on Warped Tour that day.
Mm.
So, and it was really early in the morning, so I was hanging to fuck that day, and I basically had this panic attack, and I'd never had a panic attack in my life, and I couldn't breathe. So, without going too deep into that moment, because that was the traumatic moment for me, it was one of the worst moments of my life. Really, really terrifying, especially when I'd never really touched any kind of suffering like that, and it just came at me like a million knives all at once. So, but the interesting thing, it was that from that moment which my nightmare started actually. So that moment was terrible, but then it was 2 to 3 years after that which really destroyed my life. From that moment, from then my mind completely consumed me, and almost all the common symptoms of anxiety and depression and agoraphobia and all these things just followed me after that. And it was so yeah, it was for me a thing. I think I've obviously experienced um, pain and suffering and anxiety in before that, but never to this extent whatsoever. Nothing that I would see as like a landmark in my life. So it was this event, and then afterwards, life got a little bit difficult.
Yeah, the thing with anxiety too is that there's worrying and there's concern, but
Yeah,
anxiety is like off the charts. And it can also include like irrational fears, fears that
Oh,
you know that don't even make sense, but in your mind, it feels real.
yeah.
So during the time, what were some of the anxieties or the thoughts in your head that were kind of consuming you, consuming your thoughts?
So yeah, so obviously because I'd never had a panic attack, I'd never had this like negative rush of pain just completely consume me so quick because I've never been faced with such a scenario as my mind just said I can't breathe. So then obviously what comes after that is pure panic. What do you mean I can't breathe? Isn't that not the end then? So that created that. So afterwards I developed this fear of having a panic attack or fainting or this thing would come, which was the anxiety, of course, would come. I'd have this big attack and I'd die, basically. That's kind of the longer, it's a lot more complicated than that. I don't know how to explain it, but the short version is that I was scared that this would happen again, but I would die this time, or, it would kind of
Mm.
kill me, something like that. Um, so it was always this peak. I was always worried about it reaching its peak. So it was always going like this. But the interesting thing is what I've realized years later is that there was never no peak to be reached. This was the anxiety, was the worrying about the peak. So I was always scared of it. Oh, it's going to get to this end game, big faint. They're going to have to call the ambulance, so I can't breathe, or something like that. Was creating this worry inside me. But years later, I found out that was the anxiety, that was the peak, and that was the thing I had to deal with. Do you know what I mean? So, but I think I mean, there's so many. I think I could have got diagnosed with a lot of things. I think agoraphobia would have been one of them. I was very afraid to go too far away from my house because, again, I thought the further I got away, the more the panic would come, thinking that this thing would happen and no one would be around to save me. So that kind of kept me bedridden and home ridden for quite some time. And at the very beginning of it, I was actually so frightened to go outside. I'd drink a little bit to go outside but this time, for the first time in my life, I drink because I knew it was going to take the pain away. Whereas before, I was drinking just because I thought it was fun. Do you know what I mean? I never knew I was covering up a subconscious problem. Um, but yeah, I wish I could explain obviously people that experience it, the shit your mind makes up and how it doesn't matter how irrational it is. It's from the individual perspective. And those are the things that bothered me. This whole thing about not being able to catch my breath, about fainting, about this thing coming. So then your mind just runs away with that and creates the most nightmarish things for you, specifically for you. So everyone's is completely different. And whatever event. So, I mean, I could give someone my problems and it wouldn't affect them because they haven't had my experiences. So I think it's very individual. But yeah, that's the short version of it.
Yeah, I totally get that. I mean, I remember when I was going through bad anxiety, for some reason, I was so afraid that I could never find a parking spot. And for
Mhm.
some reason, that was just as a disaster. And so, these fears that don't even make sense to us, but feel real, the agoraphobia comes from the safety of being at home, thinking that if you stay at home, all of these thoughts, all of these fears, you have a better chance of them not happening.
Yeah.
But then, then you're stuck at home. How did that affect your work and your, career as a musician?
Yeah, I was out the game for quite some time when this happened. It seemed it was a very serious thing in my life at the time. It was very work. I couldn't work. It wasn't. This is what I mean. It's very hard for me to talk about in the sense of articulating how bad it was for me personally. But I know people would relate. Like I mentioned, agoraphobia, but it was no. I was no. There was no remedy for me staying at home and making me feel a little bit safer. It was just whenever I wanted to try and maybe just go to the woods and get some fresh air, I couldn't even do that. So I'm still at home. It was a really strange thing because every moment of the day was me facing this new problem. So it was almost like I had this life before, and then I woke up, and then it was all anxiety. So I'd open my eyes, and it was instant, straight thinking about my breathing. Am I breathing right? Maybe I'm not getting enough air. Maybe I'm going to have this panic attack, and it was it was relentless. So the agoraphobia was just a cherry on top that I can't even attempt to fucking. So yeah, in terms of the career aspect, that was just gone, and that was on hold for as long as it took for me to kind of figure out what the fuck was going on. And like I went to the doctors for help and stuff, and they offered me some tablets, which I denied. This was actually the part of my story was like I was in a really bad place, and I really wanted something to take. And I think this is a universally, I think people can agree with this. Like when this is this new fear that comes out of nowhere, you want that secret pill because it's so complicated. You just give me that pill and let me get rid of it. But I knew deep down that's not really what I wanted. But I went down to the doctors to get it anyway because I was just like, look, you need to give me some. I'm freaking. I thought I was losing my mind, kind of thing. So they gave me the tablets, and then I went home and read the side effects, and that just made my anxiety trip out even more. And it was that moment where I realized I can't take the tablets because I just don't agree with that being the answer for me. So it was that moment where I turned another way.
Um, Going back to your career, there must have been family or your bandmates or friends that knew about this.
Yeah.
How did they react or to what you were going through?
Everyone was supportive, but I think everyone was very, very worried because it wasn't like I say, it was one day to the next. So I know my friends, there was a lot of conversations with even our management and stuff because we were all very close at the time. We didn't know what to do because even my closest friends didn't have a clue and didn't have an answer. And that's the terrifying thing about it really, is that even you don't have the answer, and so no one even knows what's going on the external. So it's very worrying for everyone else. And one of the scariest things about it is that for me, I was so endowed in it that no one external, excuse me, no one external would really be able to help me. I had to figure this out myself because all the love and support around me wasn't really giving me any help. It was so confusing for me. And I remember, to illustrate how strange it was for my friends, is the day it happened, I had the panic attack. I kind of came down from this insane fear. And I remember talking to my tour manager before I went back to the bus. I told my tour manager specifically, please tell the lads not to speak to me or ask me what happened, because I was so worried that their
Mhm.
question would fire off this new mind thing I've got, the thoughts would roll and snowball into this new panic attack, and it'd happen again. So my fear was that high. I said, please, I can't have anyone speak to me about it. And it was really weird because the way I was walking, I remember after the panic attack, it was externalizing the internal. I was walking like I was physically sick. I almost couldn't walk right because it had hit me so hard. It was so weird. And then obviously my friends see me walk on the bus after not knowing what happened, and then the tour manager saying don't speak to him. I think it were a very, very confusing time for everyone. So I definitely have sympathy for people's loved ones and friends when it comes so radically out of the blue. It's a scary time for everyone.
It's scary. And that's it, is like people on the outside don't know what's going on, but yourself,
Yeah.
you don't know what's going on either. You're confused. The thoughts in your head aren't making sense to you, but you're still feeling them. And so, you were in a place where you felt trapped. I mean, if you're agoraphobic and you have these fears that feel so real to you, and you feel like, oh gosh, how am I going to get out of this if I don't want to get out of the house? I
Yeah.
mean, what finally kind of made you see the light to, and I'm sure you tried a few different things, right, to help yourself.
Yeah, well, like I said, when it was when it was really bad, I was still kind of having alcohol every now and then, but I was very aware that this was the wrong way to go. I was very sure that I shouldn't be doing this. I need to figure something out soon. Um, so then that's when I went to the doctors and trying to get some synthetic help from the Western angle, and I knew it wasn't at heart what I wanted to do. So it was that moment when I was like, right, that's it. I've got to stop smoking, stop drinking, and that's when I turned to natural healing. And this is when I got really drawn to spirituality and Eastern teaching and meditation and all that world. But it was not like I just turned over to it and I'm like, oh, I found the answer. It was a real grind to try and because I was faced with the real question. It was like, I can't take these tablets. I'm struggling right now. I don't know what to do, but I'm also not in a position to kind of end my life or anything like that. So those, I kind of got given those paths, and I'm like, I'm nowhere. I'm not going to let this thing beat me, even though suicidal thoughts did present themselves to me at times. But I was in a place to kind of observe them, and not let them consume me. So there were the roads I was like, I have no choice but to really go at this. And by go at this, it was because you're trying to avoid it at all costs when it's this deep. You really don't want to spend your time working on it because it's so much, there's so much pain involved. So that's what I meant by going head on. I'm like, I have to look. There's no other way out for me. And it was the spirituality. I don't know if that's the best word, but it was that angle, the alternative healing angle that kind of, I knew it was the way I had to go. That's all. And then it was through that and much research, and I follow a lot of teachers and things like that that really gave me the power to look in myself, which ultimately for me is the answer to these problems. Fundamentally, that is the main. It's not the cure that everyone wants to hear. That everyone wants to take something or drink some tea. Like I actually did a lot of herbal remedies and stuff like that, which does help for sure. But the remedy that no one really wants is you've got to look within with some honest eyes, and it's very very hard to do. And I'm working on it still myself. But from looking so honestly back then, it's evaporated the bulk of this disgusting suffering that just came out of nowhere.
Well, I know you've talked about Eastern medicine and Eckhart Tolle and different Alan Watts that you read,
Yeah,
and I really appreciate that because the podcast also is about finding the solutions that work for you
yep,
because you have to have a lot of persistence. You got to try a lot of things, and a lot of things may not work for you, and sometimes it takes time, right? Whether
that's
it's
it.
medication or whether it's a therapy or whether it's a mindset.
Yeah, and I
So,
just say as well, like you're saying, I don't think um, there's anything wrong with any method that people choose. Everyone's so individual. It varies from person to person so vastly. My answer is not the right answer, and the things that I detest in my life also aren't the wrong answers. I think that's important to promote as well. Like it's different things work for different people for sure.
yeah. And I know that you have some family history of mood disorders in your family. You mentioned your brother also has suffered from depression, and your mother had bipolar. I was wondering, at what point did you first notice that something wasn't quite right with the way that you were thinking and feeling, or having mental issues that you felt something was wrong?
Like I say, it was from the event. It was that moment where everything set off. In my perspective, I was depressed because of my anxiety. I was very aware of how much it was destroying my life, even to the point of I can't even go to sleep. I have an old lyric in a song which was "Don't want to be awake, don't want to sleep," which was a pretty negative lyric, really, because I couldn't sleep and it was a traumatic time trying to sleep. But in the day, it was just pain all day. Do you know what I mean? So yeah, I've lost my train of thought on that one.
Okay. We do that. Um, I do that too. But you have mentioned that there is a family history of mood disorders in your family
Yeah,
and that your mother has bipolar.
yeah.
And when you were a youngster, how did you deal with that, with those, mood swings?
It's never really affected me that much. Whether I don't think, maybe subconsciously, of course, but it never really affected me. My mum's always been the way she is. That's the way I see my mum, and it's never been a problem for me whatsoever. Only now I've grown up to understand how frustrating it might be for my mum. Now I've grown up and kind of understand kind of this never-ending problem she has to deal with. I totally understand that. But as a kid, she was just my mum. It was never, and my mum's been through it all. You know what I
I'm
mean?
sorry,
Doctor.
say that one more time. It cut out. Say that about your mom one more time.
Yeah, she's my mum's been through it all basically. So this entire mental health journey, she's really had the worst of it, and she still comes out the other end smiling, which is the important thing. So yeah, but as a kid, my mum was my mum. I don't think it affected me in a conscious manner. I never was like, why is my mum acting different? Not at all. My mum's always been a really positive person, but it does get the best of her. sometimes.
Yeah. Um, well, it's good that, you both support each other and that there's an understanding there. Um, so with the anxiety, now living with it, what do you feel are some of the triggers that you have to watch out for?
Um, well, I'll reverse a little bit. So the triggers when I was kind of on the mend and kind of healing myself, I obviously avoided the situations in which basically your mind's designed these little ways of fucking you over, basically. So it's a good idea not to put yourselves in those situations, not to give your mind a head start. So one of them for me was don't drink, because basically this entire thing happened for me during a hangover. So if you drink and you're trying to, drink away your problems, you're basically giving your negative energy or your mind storm, if you will. You're basically giving it a head start the next day. You're basically taking your mind to the gym the night before, and then you're waking up and it's already ready to go. So if you have a tendency to have these negative thoughts and you're in a hungover state, you've given your problem an incredible head start. So stop doing that. It's a good bit of advice, and it does hurt a lot more to stop that, but it'll be worth it in the long run. And like things like, um, I was very afraid to like lose my breath. Do you know what I mean? And being in tight spaces and being constricted. So I just avoid things like that. But these are temporary. So whilst you're on the mend, it's just about un- awareness is key, I think, in all of this. So when you start to realize the way your mind keeps trying to play tricks on you, because it does come in patterns, I think it changes, but your mind's kind of, when it realizes it's kind of winning you over in certain circumstances, it will do it again and again. And over time, your awareness gains a little bit of control and be like, well, this situation makes me feel that way. So for a temporary solution, whilst I get a better grip on the way my thoughts are kind of controlling my life, I'm going to avoid that situation. But that's temporary until and then you can move back into these situations. And I think those are the real triumphant moments for people on the mend, is when it's bravery, man. It doesn't seem like bravery to anyone else, but to put yourself in those situations, I had to basically relive my life again, which was really annoying because I had no problem with flying. I was okay. I was an okay flyer. It's like, no problem. It's my life. I travel around the world and play gigs. It's just what I do. After this event, it's like I had to do it all again, but with anxiety. It was really awful. Like, to go back through my life and do normal things, but now with this fear of fucking dying any second or something like that. So people that sometimes you have to throw yourself in there to prove that your fears will not come to fruition. Do you know what I mean? Sometimes throw yourself in there. And for me, over time, I'm like, it never happens. This thing never fucking happens. And my mind's still getting me to invest my time into believing that this thing's going to happen. So sometimes it's beneficial to suffer in that way and throw yourself in the deep end and really be like, is it really going to take me down like I keep dreaming it up to? And but I think that's individual. I think that comes in time, and like I said, like more awareness to see how it's really affecting you.
Well, I think you sort of described the battles that can happen in your head
Yeah,
between like the dark side and what from living life. And that's it. It's this constant battle. And
yeah,
and it takes so much strength. And I'm giving you just letting you know that those battles are the toughest of your life. I mean, I know you've gone through tough things in your life. I mean, we all have,
yeah,
but I know that that is an ongoing battle. And it's, you're constantly also learning about yourself, and what works. And I read somewhere that you said to look inside, to kind of find what the core of the problem is. When you
yeah.
looked inside, what did you discover?
So the the predominant factor of a lot of this pain was a very physical emotion in my chest. So when I developed this anxiety of shortness of breath, it's a very, very physical sensation that I can't breathe. But clearly, I have enough oxygen. I'm literally sat at home doing nothing. I can't be running out of air. And it might have been a real sensation. I'm not sure, but it really feels like I need more air. That's what it generates for me. And putting your attention on that whilst you've got this monkey mind kind of trying to, the mind likes to suffer. I learned this from Eckhart toll. Like, it really enjoys to suffer, and it's true. Once it's in pain, it will do its best to keep you in pain. So whilst you've got this mind that's trying to bring you down, whilst I was putting my attention on basically the scariest part of my life, which was this shortness of breath center, when you put your attention there, it doesn't stop, but it stops it growing any further. So that's why awareness is key. So the more awareness you cultivate, I feel, because sometimes you find yourselves in these situations and you don't know how you ended up there, and that's, I feel, due to lack of awareness, and that's no one's fault. It's just the mind is so cunning, and you find yourself having an anxiety attack or you're in a depression and you have no idea how you got there. But as more awareness comes, you notice, you go, hold on, oh, there's the thought that usually brings me down to that place. I recognize this pattern now. And then you're almost given, in a weird way to put it, you're given a choice sometimes to decide whether or not, do I want to go down that rabbit hole? Because you can have positive rabbit holes as well. I think that's where creation comes from. You have an idea, and then it snowballs, and then the next thing you know, you've made an album. So it's your choice to go down that rabbit hole sometimes. Just like when you're in bed and you can't sleep, and you're just thinking up some crazy fucking idea or something. But then the negative rabbit holes are the ones that bring you down. And I think the awareness is when you start to notice what your internal mechanisms are to bring you down, and you start to realize that, and you're like, well, maybe I don't really want to spend too much energy down there. But when there's lack of awareness, there's no choice in the matter. And it sounds a lot easier said than done the way I'm speaking, but because I know the energy field of it is just too much. It's like a tidal wave, and that's it, you're gone. There's no time to put your attention in and try and look inwards. And that was, I almost knew subconsciously deep down, I know that was the answer, to look at it, but I always was confused as what does that even mean, to look at it? How do I look at it? Where is it? It feels like it's everywhere. But it's just that not letting, because as soon as you put your attention on basically anything internally, you give your mind a little break. And it's usually the mind that's making up a lot of these stories, which then evoke a terrible reaction emotionally. And that's the sensation that we don't like. So it's kind of a double-edged sword. These you can't see because your thoughts are on fire, but then they're so negative that you're generating a terrible feeling within you, and then your thoughts grab hold of this feeling and then continue to make up something else, saying, "Oh, maybe you're having a panic attack, dude," and then it's off, and then you're done. So there's never any time for any space. So I think I forget the question. Sometimes I just talk. I do apologize.
That's okay. It's okay. I know it happens. And, it's good to talk about what's on the forefront of your mind, because I do believe that everybody has something that they really want to say.
Yeah.
And it may not fit with the questions all the time, but it's important to say. And so when this feeling starts coming up, what kind of strategies and like coping skills have you learned that worked for you? Because you did, talk about self-awareness. So now you've come to the point where you are aware of the feeling of it and the thoughts of it.
Yeah. So just to touch upon the self-awareness a little bit longer is so once you become aware of these things internally, the problem is, and I'm quoting Alan Watts here, this is not my work, this is something that I resonate with what he said. Whilst there's a division internally, the mind and the idea of myself, and then the pain as well, as two separate things, this is what creates half the problem. Is we're always trying to run away from this pain internally, as if there's this negative depression or anxiety inside me, which I do not like. So this I here, Sean's here, and then the pain is here. And then you're trying to either push that pain away, you're trying to run away. And more often than not, this trying to pull away is half of the pain itself. If we could all just kind of maybe but that's what happens with the self-awareness. Once you at least put your attention on it, this idea of me trying to get away has a break. The pain is still there, but you're no longer trying to, and it doesn't feel good at all. It's not a nice feeling putting all your attention on this negative energy. It doesn't feel good. But the me trying to run away from it goes away. So the tension slows down. And then after that awareness, it slowly starts to bring you to some peace. And that is easier said than done for sure. It's definitely not an easy thing to do. And I'm not saying that's the answer as well, but it's something that kind of made a lot of sense to me. That it's like trying to run away from a headache, I feel. You know what I mean? You can't run away from a headache internally or physically. You are the headache for that moment. So Yeah, yeah.
Well, I know that you've talked about sort of embracing your emotions. And another part of Nervous on the album, the song, is y- you say it also represents accepting uh, your emotions in general. Can you talk more about that? Because I think that's really important.
Yeah, I think, well, let me just say, like, the reason I enjoy talking about these things is because I don't think it's a mental health problem we're all dealing with. I think it's a spiritual problem, and there's a reason why we're all in so much pain on so many different levels. You don't, when it gets categorized into mental health, some people might not say that I don't fall into that category, but we all experience pain. So, in terms of other emotions, that is where a lot of the pain comes from. So, it could be insecurities, you know what I mean? It could be jealousy, it could be anger. These are emotions I feel. These are emotions everyone feels at some point in their life, along with happiness. But it's these negatively charged emotions which are not to be thrown away because they're telling you something about yourself, and they're there to be looked at. And it's for me, it's a, when you're in a great mood and you feel you're filled with joy, there's no need to look inward and find out more about yourself because you're in a great state. So there's a lot of benefit in feeling these negative emotions because it's a wake up call to look a little bit deeper. So it's, I think it doesn't have to be just depression here and just anxiety here. I don't think that exists. I think everyone has their own interpretation of what they mean by feeling down or feeling low. Like you mentioned earlier, some people worry. That's, in my opinion, that's a form of anxiety, and feeling sad is a form of depression. But sometimes it goes too deep for some people, and that's when it becomes a problem. So I think there's immense benefits from experiencing these things, even though it's very hard to see. I think it sounds very strange to say, but I think it's a good thing because it's making you look deeper into the nature of being alive and existence in general. I think for me anyway, it goes a lot deeper than just, you know, an anxiety attack. I think it's saying a lot more about who we are as people, and any emotion or emotional response to anything external or internal is a wake up call to look inside. You know, why is all this insecurity coming up in me? Why is this feeling consuming me? What is it about that? So I think that's what I've learned a lot through looking inward, that I still feel a lot of these emotions, but I'm very aware of them the second they present themselves. So I almost get given this choice whether to go along with emotions and be a very jealous person or be a very angry person, or I have a choice to subside and kind of be aware of it while it consumes me, but don't go any further with my mind, like I said with the person. But again, I'm on a journey too. I fuck up and my anger will get the best of me, and it's too quick because the anger comes too quick, and your awareness has no chance to grab it, and before you know it, you're already in the angry state. You're thinking angry thoughts. Or when you're happy, you think happy thoughts. When you're angry, you think angry thoughts. You're consumed. It's too late. The awareness is gone. Um, but yeah,
Yeah, that's the challenge, right? Especially if I mean, emotions can be very reactive, and
yeah,
sometimes they can, some people have emotions that go 1 to 10, and some people have emotions that go 1 to 1,000. And
yeah,
in those moments, where they get really big, uh, you may not be as much in control of them
yeah,
unless you are aware of what's happening and what you're thinking. And like you said, if you think about the cause of those emotions, I call it giving respect to your emotions. Like, there are a lot of people that try to stuff those away or put them away. And I think what happens when you do that, it just slowly starts to grow bigger and bigger and
yeah,
come out in very unhealthy ways. But once we really look at it and, you know, talk with it and find out why, I
yeah.
think it's giving respect to your emotions. And I feel that all emotions are sort of like the colors of the rainbow. It makes us who we are, and, it creates our personality.
I agree. I think emotions are emotions. It's this whole idea of, oh, I have these good emotions and I have these bad emotions. I think this is the entire concept of, I know in Zen Buddhism this is a huge concept. Obviously you have the good on the one side, the bad on the other side, and there's a place in the middle which I think they call Ananda. I could be wrong about that, but it's a they're not to be pushed away. They're to be looked at. Like, and like I said, it tells you about yourself. And like you were saying, sometimes it's too quick and your emotional reaction is just too fast and it's already too late and it's already takes you over. That's hard for people that have had these tendencies their entire life. So it's hardwired into that's how they react. Like there'll be things that people might say to me that I just have sub a subconscious reaction to. This emotion's already gone, and I'm like, why is this a part of me still? And that is for me. I'm reading this book, this audiobook recently called Radical Forgiveness, and there's something in it I really love. He's talking about basically anything that you detest in someone else or something that you really dislike in someone else that really creates an emotional reaction in yourself. There's something in you that is very similar to what you're detesting so much. So when you get these reactions, these people that are causing them are actually your guardian angels to show you you need to look at yourself, and it's telling you something about yourself. And I think it's very true. So if you get really angry or if you get really jealous with this one person, it's a mirror. They're showing you something about yourself, and therefore it's a wake-up call to look in. So I like to promote that idea. Anything negative that you perceive as negative, when it presents itself, that is the wake-up call to have a look inside. Don't, when you feel great, don't look inside. That's wonderful. But when these things present themselves, have a look. That's what it's there for.
Right, right. Good advice. You talked about forgiveness, and I think sometimes when people go through bouts of depression or anxiety, they can act in a way that maybe afterwards they feel like, oh gosh, I need to have a talk with that person, or maybe I need to apologize. Has that ever been your, your thought, or have you ever been in those situations where you really feel like I need to kind of explain what happened there?
No, for me, it's always been. I don't know why. I think this is why it's important that it hits people so differently. I never. For me, it was like it was. Sorry, bit of a twitch there.
Okay.
Life or death situation for me. That's what it felt like. So it was almost. I became quite selfish in the fact of like I need to fix this. This is really destroying me. I need to fix it. So there was never any need for me to apologize, and I knew everyone around me kind of understood that I was on this. If I went talking to people on my phone or something, it was no. I don't think, and I think everyone has a right to be selfish, man. Especially, and this is what it's about. This is what life's about, man. Like, I don't think apology is necessary sometimes. Like, especially if people are aware that you're in these places. Like, it's for me, it's a very spiritually moving thing you have to kind of endure. Do you know what I mean? So I've never felt the need to apologize to try and better myself if it gets too bad for people socially or something. Do you know what I mean?
Right.
But
You should.
I don't think there's no problem for apologizing because obviously maybe if it's an anger thing for sure, I definitely have to apologize for anger. See, I perceive my problems in different ways. Like I might get angry and I'm like, for sure, I'll have to apologize for that. But like I said, all my inspiration comes from this kind of like anxiety, depression area. But yeah,
Well, that's good that, a lot of people in your circle kind of understand what you're going through. And it's been kind of a process. Uh,
yeah.
you know, you talked about being in a really bad place. And, when people are in that bad place, what were some of the things that you started to do that started to work that helped you get out of that hole?
So one of the things I really got interested in was Chinese medicine and herbal remedies and stuff. I really fell into this whole of that world. I've got a book to recommend as well here. Um, May as well recommend it now. Now we're on the subject.
Sure.
Uh, this is the Ancient Wisdom of Chinese Tonic Herbs by Ron Tiergarden, and it's basically everything you need to know about tonic herbs. And now I never think that they cured me, but I tell you what they did do, which I think is really important on this journey. They gave me like optimism, and I was like, I fucking found something that I really believe that this might help me. And a specific herb called Reishi Mushroom, I really connected with and I really thought this was going to help me. And I started taking these herbs along with the meditation and stuff. And the good thing about tonic herbs and herbal remedies, this is my theory on it anyway. Um, oh, my internet's fucking up again.
There, I think. Let's
Are we
see.
back? What's happening?
Mm, not quite. I see you frozen there.
I do apologize.
That's okay.
Okay, we're back. Okay, we're back.
Yeah.
Uh, yeah,
So you're talking
so
about Reiki mushrooms, or is it
Re- Reishi,
reishi?
Reishi. I
Mm-hmm.
don't know what I'm trying to spell. I can't spell. Um, so yeah, what herbal remedies are really good for is not curing the problem, but you generate sensations of anxiety when you feel these things or depression. There's a physical response in your body which feels terrible. There's something there that needs to be taken care of to soothe you through your day. Of course, there's a deeper problem which is manifesting them for sure. But you can take things to help with the feelings of anxiety, which is something that herbal remedies help with. And the same way that synthetic medicine helps with too. But in my opinion, I don't think it will get rid of the problem, but they're very good allies and tools to have when you're feeling these sensations, which you really don't like that much. I'd never, when I started to leave the house, I'd never leave the house without some valerian root and some reishi mushroom, stuff like that, just because I feel like I've got a friend with me, like a herb that can help me. And I used to take natural sedatives was a good way, which I thought was quite clever to just dull me down a little bit if it got too sharp, like valerian root or chamomile or passion flower or astragalus, lots of things like that. So I think they're really good helpers. And the reason I got drawn to reishi mushrooms so much is just the concept that mushrooms basically grow on dying matter. And what they do is they obviously break that down for new life to grow. So they feed on the negative, they feed on the shadow, they feed on the dark side of life to bring new life in. And I read a few things online about reishi mushroom. They call it the mushroom of immortality for multiple reasons. One of them being a spiritual reason, and it just made sense to me. Like, and again, whether or not this is true, it helped me because I had optimism and it empowered me um, to help myself. So just the idea that mushrooms can start to work on your subconscious level, the dark side that you don't like, maybe the mushrooms can break that down to make it more malleable and manageable throughout the day. And that's what it felt like it did for me. Whether or not it's because of that, I can't say that, but that's what happened. It wasn't consuming me as much. It was there, but I could manage through my day. So it, I like I said, I wouldn't say they did it, but I think finding something that you feel strongly, I like this. This agrees with me. I think this is a good thing for me. I'm going to give this a go. That's what I like about this, and I want people to get into is finding something to help yourself that you feel really passionate about. Like I've got a good feeling about this thing. I'm going to try that. Fuck, that didn't work. I'm going to try something else. I'm going to go again. So I think that's really important.
Yeah, I love natural remedies, and I drink all kinds of teas and things like that. And it's a the thing with herbal medicine is that it's been tried and true for a long time. People have been using this for a long time, so we know that there's some safety in the body. However, you have to also watch out. There are some things, of course, that are also natural that can harm you. So
Absolutely.
uh, but have you ever tried? I mean, conventionally, there's therapy and there's medication. Have you ever tried conventional types of things that have worked?
No, like, but again, I'm not against it. It's just for me personally, it's not what I wanted to do, but I don't think there's anything wrong with that. Like, I just couldn't get on board with these tablets will delete my lifelong mechanisms of thinking and emotions. That's where it comes from. It cannot delete that. It can only help with the symptoms of anxiety, which is the feelings and stuff. They cannot, in my opinion, solve the issue of the fundamental problem, like why am I overthinking these things individually or whatever. But I do know for a fact that they really do help a lot of people, so I'm not against them whatsoever. This is just a personal thing for me. And in terms of therapy, I got offered it's not CBT, I think
Right,
it's called.
right. Uh, Cognitive behavioral therapy, which is like talk therapy.
Yeah, yeah. So I got offered that very early, in the early stages of this thing, and I was tripping balls over, but I didn't see it was necessary for me because it was too bad. I was like, give me the fucking tablets, basically. But I think that kind of therapy, anything that kind of directs your attention inwards and you're kind of working with yourself and on yourself in that way, I think is more than beneficial. And like I said, people work in different ways. Even people talking about it helps them get it off and maybe relieves the anxiety. I don't. It's so the scale, the spectrum is so wide, so different people. That's what's so hard to even really get to the details of what people need sometimes because it's so different from person to person. But I like to be because I follow so many spiritual teachers and I have done, and I really love that. I get a lot of inspiration from those kind of people, but they all say something that the other one didn't, even though they're all talking about the same thing, which I really like, and I hope to be that for someone because I think I'm a relatively common person. I'm not nothing special at all. Like I'm just a dude from Sheffield, so it's like I hope to say something that just hits that nail for someone. Do you know what I mean? Because sometimes words pass people all the time. I can read something and it just doesn't resonate with me for some reason, but just a few words, and I'm like, oh fuck, I really get that. That makes sense to me. So I hope that's what I want to do for people, really, even if it's just a few words of encouragement. Do you know what I mean?
Well, hope and encouragement and support, those are all really important words
Yeah,
for mood disorders, especially when you're going through them.
yeah,
Um, Speaking out is such a wonderful thing. So I really thank you for sharing all that. Uh, but it really helps your fans, people that listen to you and admire your music. What are some of the things that you hear on the road, from fans that make you feel like, you've made a positive difference?
yeah. It's a weird life we're living in, and people tell me that I've saved their life and stuff, and I really don't want to say that with any kind of egotistical undertone, sorry, or anything like that, because it's not like that. But when you hear that shit, I'm like, wow, really? Like, really? And not just me because of the anxiety things I talk about. They'll say just the band has saved their life. And I'm like, fuck, man. Um, that's something, you know what I mean? We're all alive. As far as we know, we get born here and we die here, and there's this thing in the middle. So just to do something like that for someone, just to relieve a bit of pain just for that moment is just mad special. Do you know what I mean? And especially when that's not always the main intention. Our main intention isn't just to save lives. It's just sometimes we're just having fun. We want to make some fucking riffs. Do you know what I mean? And but then there's other times we're trying to put some deep stuff in the music and we want it to help, like the nervous song we're talking about. But when people say that shit, it's like it makes it all worth it. Do you know what I mean? It's like I say, it's just a weird life, and to soothe someone's pain just like that, I think what more can you ask for? I think we're all in this strange world together, and that's why, yeah, it interests me to talk about this shit.
Great, great. I, is there anything else that you would like to say about your band play, while she sleeps or about mental health in general?
Um, hmm, I think, yeah, look forward to the new song that's coming out soon. Oh shit, when does this come out?
Well, I'm thinking that since your album is going to drop April 16th, that, I'm going to try to time it so that it's around that time.
Cool,
But
because
what
we've
do you
got
think?
the nervous song is coming out in uh
Soon,
next
right?
next Thursday. So
Okay.
post that could be really cool, but that's totally your call because the entire campaign for Nervous is based around mental health, but that could be cool. But that's totally your call. Um, I don't know. The thing I'd just say is like, never be ashamed of your emotions. We're all in this thing together. It's very confusing. It's a very strange life, and I think when people walk around as if they know what's what and they know how life is and what it's all about, I think those people are a little bit deluded and a little bit delusional. It's very confusing for all of us, and we're all in it together. So I think everyone's just doing their best. You know what I mean? So, and that's why I get drawn to the spiritual world for that reason alone. Is just to and that the suffering pushed me there. So I don't know what to say to my fans other than just if you are struggling with these things, like just know I think there's something a lot deeper that's calling you. I don't think it's just about you're in pain and why is the world doing this to me. I think it's a much deeper message for you that you need to look a little bit deeper to find out. And I think those things they're screaming at you to take a look at yourself. So it's not all doom and gloom, even though I know for a fact personally it feels like that. Um, just, this is a strange thing to say, but I will say this: try and get excited about your problems. Try and get empowered, and try and get optimistic about your bad, negative depressions and anxieties. Try and get excited about them, because if you can get excited about taking care of yourself, that optimism and that empowerment is mad powerful. That's what I think got me out of my hole the most. I just the attitude of like, I cannot let this beat me, basically. And I think that goes a long way. Like, have a look at it in that sense. Look at it with those eyes one day. See what happens then. Because it comes every day, you know what I mean? And you have a decision to look in a different way. You can feel it in a different way. Try, if the depression and the anxieties are always coming and going all the time, what harm is it to try something different that at one time, and then try something different at another time? There's no harm, because you're going to experience it anyway. It's going to keep coming. So just keep searching, and like, have some faith, man. I think I'm just talking shit, but I think the answers are there. I think the answers are there for everyone. I truly do. And like I said, there's a short period of time where we're alive, and I think it's our I don't know. It's I think it's our job to find out a little bit more about why we're in so much pain.
Well, I also find, I'm going to speak for myself here, that when we get to the other side and play detective, which is what we have to do when something like this happens, because it's hard for somebody else, really, even a doctor or a good friend, to know exactly what you're going through. You have to get the strength, even if it's the little bit of strength left, to play detective and keep trying and knowing that there is going to be an answer for you. And
Yeah.
after you find that answer, you get to a different level. It's funny because it sounds like a video game, but you get to a level where you have even greater joy because you have an appreciation for life, and you have an appreciation for what you went through to get to where you are today. And you have a sense, I think, a greater sense of confidence and maybe even appreciation for yourself. Because let me tell you, it's a constant, um, you constantly learn something new about yourself as you go through this.
I could not agree more, because I felt peace before this event. Of course, I've felt peace. I felt happiness, but it tastes so much better after this event and these things I've gone through, because like, when you're in this pain, you no longer want money, you no longer want sex, drugs. All you want is not to suffer. You know what I mean? You don't want any material things like a new guitar or clothes, whatever it may be. You don't want anything. All you want is to not be in pain anymore. So once going through that, post these depressions and anxieties, when you do feel the peace, that peace tastes so much better, because you know that's all you ever wanted. And it actually grounds you a little bit more. You start to realize that all the things that you were chasing previously externally don't really solve those problems and scratch those itches. Do you know what I mean? So it's worth it in that sense, because the Buddha said this. I don't know if he said it. I've never met the Buddha, but I read a quote that's he doesn't say what enlightenment is. He said what it's not, and it's the end of suffering. You know what I mean? And that's so hard for people to accept as this big enlightenment scenario. And I'm obviously not inferring that I'm enlightened whatsoever, but it's an interesting quote. That's all we need, is not to suffer. But the mind's always on a rampage to cause some shit. You know what I mean? So I think that's important. Like, yeah, I agree with you. It tastes a lot better having once experienced that shit.
Yeah, and it seems like all the little things that might have bothered you in your younger years just don't bother you at all
Yeah.
because you've gone through the big one, right? You've gone beyond the mountain, and life does get sweeter. Life
Yeah.
gets sweeter. So, I it's like I say that because I want to remind people that there is, you know, beyond the mountain, and there's a beautiful life there.
Yeah.
So,
And I'm sorry.
no, go ahead.
Oh yeah. So I think like you said, there's a new life over the mountain. But I also believe that the problems of life will obviously continue. But the idea, we will have these moments in our life where we get tested again. But as you move through life, you will develop perhaps more awareness to tackle these in a different way each time. So it's almost like life is training you in a sense. Like peace tastes better now, but maybe I have to go through something else which is really going to push me even deeper maybe in the future. Who knows? Like, yeah.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. And thank you so much for speaking out and sharing your story and your solutions for recovery. I think it's wonderful. Um, I have this thing where it's like, I don't know if you could see my thing where it says superhero,
Oh yeah, cool.
uh, but you're now a check your head superhero
Oh, which,
because yes, yes. And it's to remind you, that every day you are a superhero and you're spreading the good word. So thank you for that.
thank you. Yeah, you're obviously the superhero too.
Oh, thank you. Hi, I'm Ari Fong, producer and host for Check Your Head Mental Health for Musicians podcast, where musicians and experts come and share their stories and solutions for mental health and wellness. If you enjoyed this video, please subscribe to our YouTube channel. And if you like us, please follow us on social media at Check Your Head Podcast and visit us at checkyourheadpodcast.com, where you'll find over 100 mental health resources that will assist you in your mental health recovery. Also, if you want to show your love, you can donate or buy the merch. We have superhero tees and hoodies for sale to remind you and your loved ones that you are superheroes every day. You rock, and we love you.